Well, good morning, everyone, and it is literally morning. I must say, I'm not my usual happy self. We just lost a cat. In his memory, I'd like to do this video, and I want it to be about pet adoption. But first, let me show you a little bit that I was filming the other day. This is when my cat was still sick and dying, because this will kind of give you a little background on my cat. I hope you benefit from this. I hope somehow it reaches out, educates someone who basically does not know about the shelter system and what they have to go through with the huge amount of animals that actually flood their system. I know I've been away for a while. One of my cats is extremely sick, and that's kind of taken all my attention as I'm trying to keep him comfortable. It looks like he's pretty much toward the end of his life. Very sad thing, but at the same time, I've got to think that he's an 18-year-old cat. He has had a really great life. I got him probably when he was about a year old, and I actually found him in a flea market many years ago. He was creating havoc with other people that used to sell there also. Anyway, they asked me if I would take him because they knew that I love cats. I took him right away. I took him home, and he has lived with me ever since. Nicest cat ever, and I'm gonna miss him, but if he needs to go, I'm not gonna stop him. The vet has pretty much given up on him, so about the only thing that I can do now is keep him comfortable and just wait. Just wait it out. So there you have it. That's the reason you haven't seen me lately. My cat, Butter, basically lived with us for 18 years. 18 years of life that he may not have had if we had not adopted him in. Now, I did not get him from a shelter. He just happened to be out in the open. I used to sell at a flea market, and we found him there. He was the sweetest thing. I can't say enough for this cat's personality and how wonderful he was. He came into everyone's life, and even people that didn't like cats so much, didn't necessarily prefer to have cats around or pets, liked this particular cat. He was so friendly. Anytime anybody came into the door, he came up and greeted them, and it was just definitely a warming thing. This is the kind of cat he was. We had him for my daughter's whole life, just about, and he has been such a big part of our family, and I really miss him. About a week ago, I took him to the vet, and pretty much they told me that he had end-stage renal failure, and there really wasn't much that they could do about it. They wouldn't even really consider treating him. They suggested I euthanize him, but he wasn't in pain. Well, I pretty much took him home to pass. With that being said, my thoughts are how we came to adopt him, and I just think of all the animals out there that need homes. You go into shelters and you see quite a few animals, people surrendering their animals to shelters, letting their animals out. Animal control comes around and collects them up. I can tell you that most of the animals that end up in shelters, especially your high kill shelters, are going to die. Even when pet adoptions go into the shelters, they have to go for the more adoptable animals. If there's animals out there that are unadoptable for one reason or another, they're still going to be in the shelter system, and chances are that they're going to be euthanized. And I make a plea to you to please consider, if you're getting an animal, please adopt. Give them a forever home. Don't let them be thrown away, tossed out like trash. There are so many dogs, there are so many cats, in shelters now that never will actually have a home. And shelters in themselves, their whole thing is trying to get the animals out. So there's all kinds of things that can happen. Of course, the euthanasia, but also some states have it into play that they can be petitioned by any college or any specific laboratory that wants to experiment on animals, and the animals taken out of the shelter, put into laboratory, and all sorts of cruel things done to them. It's not a good life. I can't say enough for neuter and spay. So many people think that that is such a bad option to neuter and spay your animals, but you're ending a lot of suffering along the way for the predecessors of the animals that you're going to neuter and spay. The biggest thing about this is to keep the population down. The population for any sort of cats, dogs, is so intense right now that there are not homes enough for them, and they end up in this system. It's never a pretty picture. Case in point, any of the cats that I have, all of them probably would have ended up dead. I know two of my cats I actually got from a situation where they were partially owned, but also somewhat feral. Several cats were just breeding like crazy, and if I had not gotten them, they would have remained outside, probably joined up with a feral colony that is right next door to where they were living, and had more kittens. Some of the cats in this situation live for a year. They get run over by cars, and things happen to them. Wild animals get them, and it's really not a pretty picture. So that's where two of my cats come from. One other cat that I have was a stray that was running around my apartment complex, and we took her in. As far as Butter was concerned, 18 years ago when we actually got him, I believe somebody probably dropped him off. Who knows? Maybe he was just of age to start breeding, and ended up marking things, and somebody got rid of him. He was about that age. But there are a lot of cats that people adopt as kittens, and when they get to that age and they start marking their surroundings by peeing all over the place, people start freaking out. Instead of doing something about it, their option is to get rid of the cat, whether they turn them into a shelter or whether they take the cat out into the country and drop them off. I'm always about kindness to animals. And it doesn't matter what animal. I know being a vegan, that kind of puts me into a category. It puts me into a stereotypical category where quite a few vegans think that it's a good idea to just let all the cats and dogs go, let them fend for themselves, and cut down on the population, which is in itself, in my opinion, it's just as cruel as killing cows and chickens, because you have animals that they were designed by man over the years, and really some of them cannot fend for themselves in nature. It's one of those conundrums where basically if you let them out in the wild, they're just not really designed to handle it. I am for cutting down the population of cats and dogs, but in the meantime, not to be cruel to the ones that exist, the ones that are still out there. If you have it in your heart to adopt, please do. Keep in mind that black cats and black dogs are much less likely to get out of shelters, and that's just basically because they don't show up in dark cages. They don't show their personalities in dark cages. So definitely keep in mind that. Also, other animals that are very, very hard to adopt are pit bulls. Pit bulls are very energetic dogs, If you have a very energetic family, one of these dogs probably will be right. The whole stigma about pit bulls being mean and nasty dogs, any dog can be mean and nasty, but it pretty much has to do with how the owner has raised or trained that dog. Help the system in any way that you can. If you take one cat or one dog home today, that's one less victim of this system. I don't want to knock all shelters, because there are some out there that are no-kill shelters. There are some out there that work with the various adoption agencies. Again, take a look at this, and if you're even considering getting a pet, adopt. Give your pet a forever home. I know there are some cases when people do adopt, and unfortunately they have to resurrender their pets, but always take a look. I see so many ignorant things around shelters. I had to get some information from one particular shelter once, and as I walked up to the shelter, which happened to be closed, there was somebody in a car about ready to surrender a little Labrador puppy. Basically, the reason she was going to do it is because one of her family members was allergic, and there was just no way that they could keep her. In itself, I get that, but she's probably under the assumption that if you take an animal to a shelter, it's a shelter. It's going to protect that animal. Not so. The shelter that we're talking about is a kill shelter. I tried to subtly convince her of this, but she did not necessarily see it that way. And I imagine the puppy was turned into the shelter. Hopefully he was cute enough that somebody definitely adopted him. I sure couldn't with 4 cats in the house, or then 4 cats in the house. There's no way that I could. You can only do what you can do. Or my pet bills are pretty much out there with veterinary and all the other care that these animals need. So, anyway, that's one story. Another story right across the street from this same shelter. One day I was driving by, and I happened to see a cat pretty much on the road, smashed. I can only imagine that somebody probably took the cat, dumped it by the shelter, and he did not make it, and he was away enough from the shelter that if anybody dropped him in or near the shelter, it didn't really have an effect. Again, a very ignorant move. I won't say a cruel move, but a very ignorant move. Somebody thought enough to take the animal to the shelter, but they didn't think enough to realize that things like that could happen, or care for the cat's welfare once it was said and done. So just be responsible with your pets. They can live long lives. They can enhance your family so much. They become a part of your family. And that's all I wanted to say. This is in memory of my cat Butter, who we loved very much. I just wanted to go into what could have been his history, what could have happened to him, because an irresponsible person dropped him off. The only other plea that I have is, if you know somebody that's so irresponsible with pets, educate them if they can. I don't think anybody starts out trying to be cruel. It's just the way that this world has been taught. If you ever see anybody abusing an animal that looks frightened around its owner, an animal that is bruised, broken bones, just does not look, animal that looks like he's taking abuse, report it. Be kind. I would tell you to go vegan and save the chickens too. Give all your animals a hug for me, and I will talk to you later.